The handcuffs clicked shut around 72-year-old Robert Hayes as his daughter screamed, "Dad, don't say another word." Across the street, HOA President Vanessa Carter folded her arms with a satisfied smile. Months of complaints, threats, and harassment had finally led to this moment. Neighbors stood silently on their front lawns, watching an elderly man being escorted toward a sheriff's patrol vehicle. Vanessa looked around as if she had just won a battle. She wanted everyone to see it. But less than an hour later, the county sheriff would read one forgotten property deed, and everything she believed about that neighborhood would collapse. Because Robert Hayes wasn't just another homeowner. He was connected to the land in a way no one had imagined. And by sunset, the woman who ordered his arrest would wish she had never learned his name. Every neighborhood has someone who believes rules matter more than people. In Maple Creek Estates, that person was Vanessa Carter. For nearly 6 years, she had ruled the HOA with absolute authority. She measured grass with a ruler, fined families for leaving trash cans outside a few extra hours, and even cited homeowners because their Christmas lights stayed up one day too long. Most people paid the fines. Others stayed quiet. It simply wasn't worth fighting her. Then Robert Hayes moved back into the old white farmhouse at the edge of the neighborhood. The house looked different from every other property. While modern homes lined the streets with identical mailboxes and perfectly trimmed lawns, Robert's farmhouse sat beneath towering oak trees that had shaded the land for generations. It felt older, stronger, almost untouched by time. Some neighbors loved it. Vanessa hated it the moment she saw it. She claimed it didn't match community standards. Within 2 weeks, Robert received his first HOA violation. Then another, and another. His mailbox, his fence, his porch swing. Even the American flag flying beside his front porch somehow became a complaint. Robert never argued. He simply smiled, thanked the mail carrier, and quietly filed every notice inside an old wooden cabinet. His daughter Emily begged him to hire an attorney. Robert always gave the same answer. Sometimes people destroy themselves without realizing it. Emily never understood what he meant. Until that Tuesday morning. Vanessa arrived with 2 HOA board members and several contractors carrying orange warning signs. She walked straight onto Robert's driveway. "You've ignored every violation," she announced loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. "This property is officially scheduled for enforcement." Robert calmly stepped outside, holding a cup of coffee. "What exactly are you enforcing?" "The illegal structures." Robert slowly looked around his property. "My front porch, my shed, my fencing." Vanessa smiled. "All of it." Emily immediately protested. "You can't demolish someone's property without a court order." Vanessa held up several papers. "The HOA has all the authority it needs." Robert looked at the documents for only a few seconds before handing them back. "I hope you've read every page." Vanessa laughed. "I've read enough." "No," Robert answered quietly. "I don't think you have." She rolled her eyes. "That's exactly why we're finished talking." Instead of ordering demolition, she pulled out her phone. Minutes later, sheriff's deputies arrived. Vanessa confidently pointed toward Robert. "He's refusing to comply with a lawful HOA enforcement order and interfering with contractors." Several neighbors gasped. Emily couldn't believe what she was hearing. Robert hadn't threatened anyone. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't even stepped beyond his porch. Yet Vanessa spoke as if he were dangerous. One deputy approached Robert respectfully. "Sir, we'd like to understand what's happening." Before Robert could answer, Vanessa interrupted. "He's trespassing on HOA-controlled property." The deputy frowned. "Trespassing? On his own property?" Vanessa nodded confidently. "The HOA owns this section of land now." Robert looked directly at the deputy. "I wouldn't make that assumption." The deputy hesitated. Vanessa immediately handed him a thick folder. "Everything is documented." After several tense minutes, the deputies made a decision. They placed Robert in handcuffs while they sorted out the legal dispute. Emily burst into tears. Her father simply whispered, "It's going to be all right." As the patrol vehicle pulled away, Vanessa smiled proudly at the gathering crowd. She believed everyone had finally seen who was in charge. But inside the sheriff's office, something unexpected was already beginning. Sheriff Daniel Brooks wasn't interested in HOA politics. He only wanted to verify the ownership records before filing paperwork. A routine task. One search. 5 minutes at most. But when the county clerk opened the oldest property archives, she suddenly stopped typing. Her eyes narrowed. "That's impossible." Sheriff Brooks leaned closer to the monitor. What is it? Without answering, the clerk stood up and walked toward a locked records room that hadn't been opened in years. She returned carrying a thick, leather-bound ledger covered in dust. She carefully opened it, turned one fragile page, then another. Finally, she pointed to a handwritten entry dated nearly 70 years earlier. Sheriff Brooks read the name once, then read it again. The color drained from his face. He looked at the original deed, then at the neighborhood map, and quietly whispered, "Oh my God." Sheriff Daniel Brooks stared at the faded deed in complete silence. The county clerk slowly slid another document across the table. "This isn't just any property," she said quietly. "Maple Creek Estates was never built on land purchased from multiple owners. Every single street, every home, every park, every HOA office traces back to one original family." Sheriff Brooks looked down at the signature. Hayes, the same last name as the elderly man sitting in the back of his patrol car. He immediately picked up the phone. "I need every deputy to hold their position. Do not process Robert Hayes until I get there." Outside, Vanessa Carter was celebrating. She proudly told the remaining neighbors, "This is what happens when people think they're above HOA rules." A few homeowners applauded. Others remained silent. Something about Robert's calm expression before he was taken away didn't sit right with them. Emily stood in the driveway, fighting back tears. She looked at the empty farmhouse and whispered, "Dad, what did you know?" Less than 20 minutes later, 3 sheriff's SUVs pulled onto the street. Vanessa smiled. She assumed they had returned to remove Robert's old shed once and for all. Instead, Sheriff Brooks stepped out holding a thick leather folder under his arm. His face was cold, professional. He walked straight past Vanessa without saying a word. She hurried after him. "Sheriff, I'm glad you're back. We can finally finish this." He didn't even slow down. When he reached the farmhouse, he turned toward one of the deputies. "Bring Mr. Hayes here." Moments later, Robert stepped out of the patrol vehicle. The handcuffs had already been removed. Vanessa's confident smile faded. "What are you doing?" she demanded. Sheriff Brooks looked directly at her, correcting a very serious mistake. The entire neighborhood gathered in silence. Brooks slowly opened the old ledger so everyone could see. This land was purchased by William Hayes in 1954. The deed granted permanent ownership rights that have never been extinguished. Vanessa folded her arms. "That doesn't matter. The HOA governs this community." Brooks calmly shook his head. "No, it governs the homeowners." He pointed to another page. "But according to county records, the Hayes family retained ownership of the original common land beneath several HOA-controlled parcels through a perpetual property agreement." Vanessa blinked. "What does that even mean?" "It means," Brooks replied, "your HOA never owned as much land as it claimed." A wave of whispers spread through the crowd. The HOA board members looked at one another in disbelief. Brooks continued, "Your office, the entrance monument, several landscaped areas, even portions of the road leading into this neighborhood, all sit on land that legally remained under the Hayes family estate." Vanessa's face turned pale. "That's impossible." Robert finally spoke. "I tried to tell you to read every page." She pointed an angry finger at him. "You hid this." Robert slowly shook his head. "No, you never bothered to look." Sheriff Brooks held up another document. "And there's something even more troubling." The street became completely silent. "Our investigation found that the HOA submitted inaccurate property descriptions when issuing enforcement notices against Mr. Hayes." He looked directly at Vanessa. "You also signed legal declarations claiming ownership of land your association did not legally possess." Vanessa's voice cracked. I relied on old HOA files." Brooks answered firmly. "Those files don't override county records." One board member stepped away from Vanessa, then another. Within seconds, every member of the HOA board had quietly distanced themselves. No one wanted to stand beside her anymore. Emily finally smiled for the first time that day. She walked over and hugged her father tightly. "I knew you weren't afraid." Robert gently smiled. "I wasn't protecting myself. I was protecting the truth." Just then, county investigators arrived with boxes for HOA financial records. Brooks addressed Vanessa one final time. "Mrs. Carter, based on the evidence currently available, this matter is being referred for criminal and civil investigation regarding false filings and unlawful enforcement actions." The same neighbors who had watched Robert leave in handcuffs now watched investigators enter the HOA office. No one spoke. No one celebrated. They simply watched justice unfold. A few weeks later, the HOA board voted unanimously to remove Vanessa as president. Several homeowners who had been fined unfairly received refunds after the association settled multiple legal claims. The entrance sign to Maple Creek Estates was restored. Beneath it, a small bronze plaque was placed in honor of William Hayes, the man whose land had made the entire neighborhood possible. Robert never asked for an apology. He never demanded revenge. Every morning, he sat quietly on the same old porch swing with a cup of coffee, waving to neighbors as they passed by. One evening, Emily asked him the question that had stayed in her heart. "Dad, why didn't you reveal the deed the moment she started targeting you?" Robert looked across the neighborhood, where children were riding bicycles and families were walking their dogs. Then he smiled gently. Because character isn't revealed when everything is easy. He looked toward the former HOA office. It's revealed when someone believes they have all the power and chooses how to use it. Sometimes, the strongest person in the neighborhood isn't the one who makes the loudest threats. It's the one who quietly waits for the truth to speak for itself.